then it won't play. So aquatic biomes is what we're going to cover. And I'm hoping it's recording. There's two types. Anybody know what they are? No, it's like... Yes. Where are we? I heard it. Freshwater is the first one. Yep. And saltwater, which is also referenced as the marine biome. Does that make sense? Whatever. All right. So there's a picture of fresh and marine biomes kind of combining in some ways, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But there's like, you know how terrestrial biomes have factors that determine one terrestrial biome from another? What's the factor that determines one aquatic biome from the other? Salinity. Good. Now, once we cover salinity, obviously determines one aquatic biome from the other, and we're only in one, what do you think is the next biggest contributing factor? Light. Good. Sun, light, or temperature. Awesome. And depth. You could put all those together. And I have to pause again. I'm going to focus on the marine for a lot of this unit, okay? There are zones within the marine biome. The first zone is called the intertidal zone. What can you tell me about this zone? Is that like near the shore? Near the shore. What else? Tell me what characteristics take place in that zone. Small. What are these small organisms like? What can they have to be able to? They can be. They have to be able to retain water. They have to be like terrestrial and aquatic. Some of them like multi-biome. What else? But when they're in the water, what do they have to be able to handle?
No, the
pounding of the waves. Okay, so they got to be able to handle tides because tides take place there. So like you mentioned, be able to be on land and water, and at the same time they're like drifters, so they kind of float around because they have to handle the current. You don't have to know about the spray zone and high tide zone and none of that. Okay. And I'm going to talk more about organisms. It's that when I do release those notes, like life in aquatic biomes, I'll release that afterwards. The next zone is called the the neritic zone. But before I talk about the neritic zone, they gave a name to intertidal and neritic together, and it's called coastal, which makes sense, right? The coast, near the shore. So if you go from the shore out to the neritic zone, together they make up the coastal zone. Look at the picture. What do you see in neritic zone? Coral. It is the rainforest of the sea, which means what? Most diversity in all of the marine biome is found in this zone, in the neritic zone, because coral reefs are found in the neritic zone, and so are estuaries, which are also very diverse in life. Oh, and there's your coral reef in action. The last zone is called the Oceanic zone, and it is also known as the open sea. And it's the largest zone of the marine biome. Now, in the Oceanic zone, because there's so much depth, it has zones, okay? So a lot of times I've referenced these three as like horizontal zones. I left the shore and I'm swimming out. I'm in the what? I swim in, I'm floating. Intertidal. I keep swimming and now I see coral reefs. I'm in the, and then if I go out to where the water turns darker, there's a drop. So it's actually a drop in the continental shelf, and you can put that in your notes. That's where the open sea begins, okay? So if you think of Nemo, right? Let's name the zones, the zones, the zones. Let's name the zones of, I can't believe I just did that in the video. So here's Nemo.
Let's name the zones, the zones, the zones. Let's name the zones of the open sea. You better stay in. All the rest are too deep.
All right, so the zones of the open sea. And Nemo was in the neritic zone, right? And then there was that drop. Remember when he's kind of hiding there? And yeah, that's the open sea. And he even references it like that. So the first zone is actually will go extend from the open sea or marine zone all the way to the intertidal zone, because it's the first what I call vertical zone. So it's a cross. It's a purely lit zone. It's called the epipelagic zone in the open sea, but it's a photic zone across the whole marine biome, right? Does that make sense? Because when you step into the intertidal zone, you're in a photic zone or a euphotic zone. You're in a light zone. Going all the way across, the first layer of the ocean is fully lit. Does that make sense? But in the drop, they call it the epipelagic zone. So there's two ways to learn these zones. The names of the drop zones, which is the open sea zones, and then referencing them as light zones. So the whole neritic and intertidal zone is euphotic, which is a fully lit zone. Light penetrates that whole zone. And in the open sea, the epipelagic zone is euphotic and a fully lit zone. Now we're going to go deeper. You do not have to know the depth, the 200 meters or any of that, okay? We're going pretty deep. The next zone is mesopelagic. And that zone is also lit, but it starts to lose a little bit of light. So if you look at the diagram and how the colors start to slightly change, okay? We move down to the bathyal zone, which becomes dysphotic or twilight, or sometimes they call it the twinkle zone because light comes in and out. Now, sometimes between the meso and the bathyal, you'll have some dysphotic, okay? Depends. Then we move on to the dark zone. No more light penetrates the zone. Anybody know what it's called? Because I know you know this one. The deep, deep ocean is called the abyss or the abyssal zone. So if you notice, epi, meso, bathyal, abyssal, all of them end in pelagic. So you can learn the root names, maybe that'll help. EMBA, can you make something out of that? And then below that, you've got that trench, which is called the hadal zone. The last zone, which technically goes throughout the whole entire marine biome, is, I'm drawing right through here, is the floor of the ocean, which is called the benthic zone. Travels all across, right? As soon as you go into the intertidal zone, your feet, if you're not floating, are touching the benthic zone. So it's really not, it's not a unique zone. It's everywhere. Can the benthic zone have light? Yes, because if you're in the intertidal zone, the benthic zone is shallow, so light penetrates. Is there light in the benthic zone if you're in the hadal zone? No. Okay? And if you notice, you could be in the abyssal zone and still there's a benthic zone because there's that drop, like I told you, in some parts of the ocean. So benthic is... What kind of organisms live in my open sea? Large mammals, good. That's going to be basically the determining factor of the epipelagic, mesopelagic. And as we move down to the non-lit zones, then you start to see these evolutionary characteristics of organisms where they have those I don't remember what they're called, the light up features and the extenders and everything lights up because it's a dark zone, so they've developed like their own light. And features of organisms being able to produce food without light, which are called what? Chemosynthetic bacteria, good. So this picture shows you the hadal zone, which is that drop or that trench, right? And this would be what? The floor, the benthic zone. And if I go this way and I'm heading towards the shore, where am I heading towards? The coastal zone, which first would be what zone? Neritic, and then eventually intertidal and the shore, okay?